Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Winter 2023 Soiree. And we are now beginning session one. And with this session, our first topic is presented as a fast forward video from Dr. Holly Adams.
Hi, I'm Holly Adams, and I teach a class called Games, Simulation, and Performance at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. This course is a critical inquiry course, so I'm lucky enough to not only teach technical skills in programming, but also to engage with the cultural significances of these different medias and tools. One of the learning objectives in the course is that students gain proficiency with Unity, specifically using location data of mobile devices to create a locative media project. I'm going to walk through the structure of my introduction to Unity lesson. First, we go through some examples of different ways that we can engage with location data. So I like this window swap as a good example, and Radio Garden as an interactive interface to deal with location data as well. From there, we go to NYC's Open Data Portal, and we look at different types of files that can come through with geospatial data, specifically getting towards GeoJSON files, which we then directly engage with and edit as well. From there, we move into Mapbox, so students are able to edit and customize their maps based on the GeoJSON data that they pulled from NYC's Open Data. And then we use Mapbox's SDK for Unity and go through the Intro to Unity lesson, so building on those Unity skills with the engagement with the NYC Open Data as well. In this way, students learn to engage with Unity while also considering why they're engaging with these medias in these different ways, considering the social impacts of location-based games and geospatial data as a whole. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that submission. I think I just want to check my schedule to make sure I get the order correct. Yes, absolutely.
So the title of our presentation is long but very deep. Non-humans teaching humans, humans teaching non-humans, and we will be searching for and creating non-existing life forms in Metaverse. Let's introduce ourselves first. Roger?
Yeah, so I'm Roger Malina. I'm originally an astrophysicist working for space agencies. Then I became the editor of the Leonardo publications at MIT Press. And I now am a professor at the University of Texas, Dallas. I'm a professor of physics, but I'm also a professor of art and technology. And I co-direct the art science lab that Heidi is a member of. Thank you.
And I'm Rejane Spitz. On my sabbatical, I went to the Space Science Lab at UC Berkeley to work with a very interesting project. And then I was already collaborating with Roger since 91, 92. I was a member of the Leonardo ISIS group. And I was full professor and coordinator of the Electronic Art Lab until this month. And I have just retired, and I'm now an independent artist, researcher, educator, who continues to work with computers in the arts and design and to research into that. Okay, so our train of thought today was very crazy, but the emergence of life in complex systems. And then we will go into searching for and creating new life forms in or for the metaverse. Then we'll explore the potential of the metaverse for changing the very nature of educational processes. And we're going to discuss how can educators help promote this paradigm shift. And we're going to propose very challenging things. Roger?
Okay, so my background in astrophysics led me to become quite informed about the science of complex systems and how natural phenomena in complex systems often emerge as life forms, but also disappear, go extinct. And so just to contextualize, well, I did organize a bunch of conferences on arts, humanities, and complex networks, so that I have a lot of background. So just to frame this, it's, yes, it's academic BS, but there will soon be 8 billion humans in the metaverses. So I'm not saying 8 billion humans are online yet, but certainly the metaverse is being designed so that every human could have access to the metaverse. I looked up the current account. There are 2 billion computers that don't include cell phones. And then, ironically, in brain science, one human brain is equivalent to 24,000 computers. So I guess the posit is that we're now creating a system that's sufficiently complex that things may emerge that we the designers did not design. And I'm part of a group which is led by Julian Gresser. He used to be a Harvard law professor, but he's become very interested in how in emerging systems, it's very important to pay attention to coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. These are not causal mechanisms, but they might allow you to detect things that are emerging in a complex system. Thank you, Rejane.
So when we ask, is anybody out there? We remember Dan Wertheimer, who was running the SETI at home from 99 to 2020. And the whole point was that radio signals would provide evidence of extraterrestrial technology. And how do you analyze data coming from radio telescopes? By using computers and cell phones from millions of volunteers. That's the way they found to be able to process all this very complex data. So the same methods for searching for new life forms, collaborative, interdisciplinary, planetary, creative, engaging, and very inclusive, because amateurs too were participating in the search for life. We can apply the methods of SETI in Metaverse. This is one of our questions. Roger?
Okay, so I happen to have the misfortune to be an elected member of the International Academy of Astronautics, and I'm a member of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Committee. And 30 years ago, NASA didn't want to know anything about searching for extraterrestrial life. And now it's part of NASA's mission statement. And that transition, as Rejane kind of referred to, was the emergence of a bunch of professionals who developed methodologies for detecting extraterrestrial life outside of our planet. Protocols, and there are all kinds of rule books, and how you double check and so on, who has the right to reply. Which gets me to the Messaging to Extraterrestrial Intelligence Committee that Doug Vankos set up about 20. So if we do detect extraterrestrial life, what do we send back to them? We have no idea what their sensory equipment is. So Carl Sagan was stupid. He sent some music out to extraterrestrial intelligence. We don't know if extraterrestrials can hear sound. And so I guess I kind of find myself in a time warp where we're building this metaverse and there may be extra meta-life intelligence. I don't know, the acronym is confusing. And so there are established methodologies that scientists and humanists and politicians have been using. So maybe we should put those in place for the metaverse. Thank you, Rejane.
So we come up with a few examples. Back in the 90s, Carl Sims came up with this evolving virtual creatures he published in the proceedings of SIGGRAPH 94. And these were creatures that could evolve and co-evolve by competing in physically simulated three-dimensional worlds. And they would go into a one-on-one contests. And depending on their scores, they would be allowed to survive and reproduce. This is very, very interesting. I highly recommend people to read this paper that is so old, but so incredible. Roger.
Okay, so Heidi is now going to present her fish project. I think Heidi has stumbled onto a very interesting case study, I guess would say. If any of you have lived on a coastline, you know how important fish life is. And fish clusters in schools, they evade pet predators, not individually, but collectively. And so I think what Heidi is going to do is test some very fundamental ideas of the importance of non-humans in human society. And so I'll let Heidi present the project, but as a joke, as we were preparing for this, I have been to Brazil many times, thank you, Rejane, and just going down the coast of Brazil, there are different kinds of fish and they behave differently, but there are different predators along the coastline. So I don't know what a predator is in Metaverse. I guess cyberbullying is a form of predatorship. So if people start getting cyberbullied in the Metaverse, maybe they'll school and fight back as collective anti-cyberbullying. So enough there. Heidi will explain it more clearly.
This is you again.
Okay, so again, the luck that we have, if you've been in these professions long enough, we know the way education is designed today was invented in the 19th century and uses the brain science of its time. We now know that the brain functions very differently than we thought it did 150 years ago, but universities and high schools still use the same brain science. How stupid can you be? So as we build the metaverse, maybe we need to rethink what education means when there'll be 1 trillion intelligences, human, artificial, and alternative, and maybe self-generated intelligences. How do we, and yes, new life forms may emerge that we don't have a school, that's ambiguity, that we don't have a university for. So how do you train Heidi's fish in the metaverse to avoid predators? So I think this is idle speculation, but the history of humanity is that idle speculation, science fiction, etc., can help us identify key issues and maybe address them. So maybe we can develop a specific kind of artificial intelligence that educates artificial intelligences, human intelligences, Heidi's fish. Now, maybe that's too ambitious. I don't know who's going to pay those taxes, but thank you.
So everybody will be educated in the metaverse, not only humans, but non-humans also. Everyone will require deep learning education. And we have some final challenging proposals for the ACM SIGGRAPH Education Committee, which I'm part of. We should take on the development of education of and for all forms of life in the metaverse. And maybe we should appoint artificial and alternative life forms to be on the committee by now. And this is not a joke, because we know it's already happening, as we have been discussing thoroughly. AI is making decisions in many fields for many people now. So we invite you all to discuss and debate all these challenging ideas. This is the spirit of SOIREE. I think we are actually provoking everyone. And we have additional slides if you're interested. Roger, would you like to say something?
Let me just refer to the keynote of Mike Miho and Glenn, I think it was. Thank you so much for your presentation. What it made me think of, and I put it in the chat, was my experience in transdisciplinary collaboration and maybe trans-species collaboration is getting everybody to share the same tools is the easy part of the problem. How you get these different entities to agree on success criteria. And I'm not looking for a job, but my students are. So when we work on a project, we have conflicting success criteria. And so I rely on a methodology for collaboration called the Science of Team Science that was developed by the National Institutes of Health, where you try and train people to collaborate. Yes, you've got to use the same tools, but it's amazingly difficult. And so I think SIGGRAPH should also focus some attention onto the training of collaboration. And I have no idea what that syllabus would be for the metaverse. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we have time for the conversation and not jump ahead on that. So, and plus I have questions for Holly later too. Heidi, how is that screen locking working out for you? Were you able to, do you think you'll be able to, oh, look at that.
I want to thank Roger and Rejane for inviting me to participate. Roger and I have become collaborators and conspirators, I think, at UT Dallas. So I come to this as a humanist. And so I usually, from my perspective, I raise questions. And so in thinking about the project that Roger has mentioned, and as has Rejane, I start with questions. And so I'm interested in thinking about what it means to cultivate a community of interpreters. I borrow from the American philosopher, Charles Saunders Peirce. And I'm interested in thinking about what it would take to encourage people to engage in conversation and what kinds of conversation might open on to different kinds of interdisciplinary exchange and interoperative learning. And so I've made a proposition, and that is I looked to koi fish as a particularly social fish. They are playful and they interact with each other, and even those on the other side of the water. So they interact with us. And so I'm interested in the pools in which they gather or that we find them, their aesthetic, their responsive environments. And they offer the opportunity for reflection, contemplation, rejuvenation, and just exchange. So my thought was, what if we ourselves could become a fish? Or at least be represented by a fish avatar and occupy or inhabit a pond? What might we observe in our habits of interaction and dwelling? What might we learn about our relations to each other and our surroundings? And how might our insights inspire new ways of relating to each other and to place and to our digital representatives, right? So thinking beyond just the actual, but how do we imagine the exchanges we have building across into the virtual? What might this mean for new forms of community? And so, I'm thinking about what would it look. So you see on screen the first representation of a model for a fish. It is actually an origami fish, because we wanted to go with a paper medium and we wanted to play with the logics of medium. But the idea would be, what would happen if you could skin your fish avatar, right? Provided its own kind of looks and such. And so I'm interested in the bigger idea. And Roger, this is probably what you don't know about the bigger idea was I ultimately imagined submersible screens and a mobile application. So Roger's familiar with the mobile application. And so the application would invite potential interactors to scan a fish that best represents themselves and place that fish into a pond. This pond would be site specific. The koi fish, the application would monitor the interactors' kind of practices and patterns of behavior in public space, particularly in a space that's pre-identified. And so for me, and as I've been talking with Roger, this would be like a university campus. We happen to have reflecting pools that go across a mall. So this for me is like, but in the most prototype, in a prototype, it would just be a screen on a wall. But so the fish app and the fish would gather various data about where a person is going, how it's behaving, how the person is interacting with the space. It would look at commonalities across different fishes and kind of begin to think about how those fishes might pool together. And in this case, we might imagine that these fishes, not game players, right? So I'm not imagining game players. I'm imagining these fishes being their own entities that are somehow a composite or a composite of their interactor, such that they might reveal to us in their own behaviors the kinds of things that we do. And they might allow us to understand better how we populate, like how we populate spaces. And ultimately, I'm interested in thinking more broadly how these fishes might open onto the possibility of realizing new communities of exchange. So if fishes get weighted, and so like there's the technological, how do they get weighted? How do they get mapped? But then how do those diagnostics allow certain fishes to understand that they belong together? And how do they incite their human persons to also come together? And so what kinds of conversations or exchanges might result as a consequence of these interactions? What kinds of collaborations might we imagine, and what kinds of exchanges, what kinds of efforts might we think in terms of sharing, thinking, and doing together? Moreover, I'm interested in thinking about how these fishes might learn to navigate towards points of connection between people. How might they facilitate their persons' movements such that we might see schooling in pools? And how might such schooling open onto different kinds of learning, different kinds of research? And how might these fishes push? Well, I don't know. I think that's my last slide. I think how might these fishes push us further to be more inclusive in terms of our way of behaving and interacting and conversing? And so I will stop there.
All right. No, thank you so much. I'm glad that the presentation worked out. We'll go ahead and so I'm going to circle around with everyone, and I'm going to start with Holly. I'll say that I really was fascinated by this group of presentations because they seem to take a very interconnected with the rest of the universe approach of teaching computer graphics in interaction. And Holly, what I was really fascinated, it sounded to me like you're teaching really an introductory level course in Unity. And a lot of times these introductory courses are purely about this is how to do X, Y, and Z, and this is how to loop and how to respond to events and get different graphics moving on the screen. But yours seems to open up immediately with connecting with the greater city around you. And so I'm curious to know, what do you feel like might be one of the most surprising things that you've seen develop in your classroom or have a student do with this kind of approach to introducing computer graphics and interaction teaching?
Thank you. I appreciate that question. I think that the conversation about collaboration definitely goes along with this question as well. In my last semester, I had students who teamed up and worked together unprompted on a project where they were using NYC open data with high-end condominium developments and aligning those things with where subway stops are, and also looking at income distribution as a whole. So getting to know the city in a really deep level on a data level, and then also thinking about how those things can be used in our mobile devices. So I think that teaching with the social structures is an integral part of what you're teaching is definitely necessary. I mean, when we're equipping students to use a tool like Unity and use something like a mobile device and GPS data, it's why are we using those tools? Which is exciting. And yeah, it's an introductory course. So we get into a lot of the basics of Unity, but students are able to come away with it with a project that they can show their friends, they can send their friends the link to get the app that they've made in order to like interact with the city in this new way. So it's empowering for students to have something that they can walk around anywhere in the city and experience something that they made, experience the city through a lens that they've helped create, and also to gain these starting off with those skills with Unity. And some of the students never use Unity again. It's a wide range of departments who take this class, but at the very least, they're learning to engage not just with the technology, but with the social structures as well.
And how do you find in general the students are responding to this idea of connecting to the community data as a component of the course? I'm not sure if I saw a catalog, a course catalog, it's like, oh, introductory to Unity, and then came in and it's like, wow, this isn't Unity. What's going on here? How's that working out?
Right. So it's framed as a critical inquiry course. It's actually within I'm lucky enough to teach programming in the humanities department, which is a great intersection of things. And I think it's really essential. So students know what they're getting into. I think, I make it clear in both the course description and that first day of class that we're going to be digging into power structures and hierarchies, because with any technology, especially in developing experiences that other people are going to go through, if you're developing a lens to interact with the city through, that's so much power. And so we talk a lot about what it means to curate experiences for other people using technological tools. So I think students know what they're getting into with the course, I hope.
That's great. No, that sounds fantastic. My only final note before asking somebody else a question is that I hope you stay connected with those students over these, over the coming months and years. And I would love to have you back with a follow-up presentation about, well, this is where their students went and what they ended up doing. And it would be really interesting to see the impact of their experience with you as they continue their studies. So
I appreciate that. I have them on a list for when student volunteers open up for this SIGGRAPH. I know that there's some interest within the students from my last semester. So well, I'm sure they'll stay connected.
You've got time to email them between now and 3:45 is our SIGGRAPH 2023 session today. And there will be a representative of student chapters visiting. And I think we might have somebody coming in specifically from student volunteers. And so in either case, it might be of interest to the students. So feel free to email them that registration link. They might be interested in that. So, coming from Holly's project that is, already broadly more social than a traditional, what probably we think of as a traditional computer graphics and interaction class. Now we've got Rejane, Roger, and Heidi that are taking that out beyond our species, and we're simulating creatures and then looking for other intelligences in the metaverse. I'm curious, Roger and Rejane, how did you happen upon the idea of this? Was it just that you saw the SETI project and was like, wonder that that's going, or was there something else that kind of sparked this inquiry?
Maybe I should start by saying that we work next door to Dan Wertheimer. And I was a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley, and I was there surrounded by scientists and space scientists. And one day in the cafeteria, Dan and I were quiet together, just the two of us. And I looked at him and I really asked him the question, do you think there is a possibility that there is an intelligent life out there? And he looked at me and he kind of smiled at me and said, yeah, there is a possibility. And then that changed my life. Just knowing that I was working next door to someone who sees the cosmos in a completely different way than I do. And at every door in the Space Science Lab at UC Berkeley, and I met Roger also at the astrophysics department. So it's like incredible if you go from your educator, art and design educator role into this unknown field. And so that was the very beginning for me of this idea. I always refer to the context in which I am in a much bigger way than people usually do. I tend to see the cosmos, the universe, the unknown as part of my living. And that changed my mode of thinking, that changed my life profoundly. The experience of being there for a year, 2 years, working with space scientists. And so that was for me the starting point. I was already working with Roger in Leonardo, electronic art and ideas. But that was for me the whole idea of life is not just the way we know it. Life is not just the place we live is not just planet Earth. And for me, I would like to pass on to Roger because he
okay, so I've been in a private chat with Bill Joel, and it was just kind of spooky seeing that name and saying, are you the one I know from 50 years ago? But what I just wanted to put on the table is I really like the connection between Holly's work and Heidi's work. And, it just gave me this, one of my motivations that I told Joel was that, I was in Berkeley in the late 60s, early 70s, when the internet was created. I was just down the road from Silicon Valley. And boy, were we stupid and ignorant. It was going to make a global village, peace, love, and rock and roll. Well, I think the internet has created more problems than it solved. Okay, I'm exaggerating for emphasis, but it's frightening how the polarization of society due to the internet has just exploded. People, anyway. So yeah, Holly, I think, by bringing the local into the virtual, one of the buzzwords is augmented reality, but I think you're talking about something different, of embedding the work of these students in the context where they live. And there are all these things I know locally that nobody else knows on the planet. What fish can I go fishing for, Heidi? So, I think, Heidi, what we're really trying to do is social engineering, where we do experiments to make sure that when the metaverse explodes, cyberbullying isn't the dominant thing, the sex industry, the drug industry. I mean, it's frightening if you look at the economics of the internet. It's not education that's driving it. It's not empathy. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. So how do we as SIGGRAPH educators anticipate the things that are going to go wrong and design the metaverse differently? And I think we have a case study of how the internet went wrong. And fortunately, I'm now a tenured professor, so I can take intellectual risks that untenured professors cannot take. I think, Heidi, you're tenured. But no, I mean, this sounds like academic nonsense that we're discussing, but then we bring it right home through Heidi's project. No, walk out the building and go look at that reflecting pool. Oh, it's connected with my virtual world. Maybe I should think about what I throw in the pool before I do it.
I was actually thinking, I apologize that I'm interrupting.
No,
but
no,
I
I'm
wanna make sure we get
gathering on
everybody.
and on.
No, it's really good, because I was thinking about Heidi's piece, and you know, there's the idea of the canary in the coal mine, right? The lets us, you know, lets the miners know that there's a problem and everybody needs to get out. And could Heidi's project become the koi fish in the metaverse? Like, how are the koi fish doing? Are they thriving, and how many of them are there? And do you see perhaps these essentially metaverse creatures potentially being bellwethers for us as humans as we find our way into the metaverse? In a lot of ways, your fish are populating the metaverse, perhaps even more so than humans are right now. Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. And I think absolutely the point of the fish are to build communities, right? I think once stray is too far away, like where do they go? They don't want to be. So the interesting thing about koi fish is they don't like to be alone, right? So the point of taking up the koi fish is because they are actually social figures. And maybe there's something we learn about learn by becoming with the koi fish, right? So, I mean, that's a bit abstract probably, but I don't think they'll stray far from each other. I think they don't want to hurt each other. So what if there's the possibility that they learn us to behave more like them, right? And so then what does it mean to become koi fish? What does it mean to become engaged with and related to, I mean, you know, why not one with one's koi fish? What does one learn because the koi fish behaves like a koi fish and we learn to behave? We inhabit those kinds of practices because the koi fish is like that. And so what does it mean if we put that out into the virtual? Like, oh, I have no, I mean, I hope it's good, right? I mean, I hope that what we're really thinking about is taking advantage of what we know from our world and do things differently so that it's not just, as Roger would say, sex, rock and roll and sex and whatever. I would hope that we think about like what it means to be community, what it means to be socially engaged, what it means to collaborate. How do we work together? How do fish show us how to, I mean, and for me, this is more about, you know, in the local context, more about thinking across disciplinary boundaries. I find where I'm at, and Roger, you can correct me, but it's very siloized, and I'm not interested in siloization, right? I'm interested in people coming together about a problem, and they come from different backgrounds, disciplinary backgrounds, and building conversations and projects that work towards resolving problems.
Okay,
so I think the fish can do that.
Nick, can I bring William Joel into the discussion? Can you enable him? Because
well, actually, we're about out of time for our
session. I encourage
here.
you, everybody, because I've been reading his text, and it's almost like my subconscious knows things that my conscious self doesn't know. And thank you, William Joel. But I mean, seriously, the Turing test has been badly misinterpreted. Turing did not want us to focus on making artificial intelligence human-like. He wanted to improve human intelligence with other forms of intelligence. And fish have intelligence that maybe we need to learn from. And so, William Joel, please read all his chats. But it, you know, how important is sentience was one of his questions. Well, when you're reacting quickly, it's called gut instinct. You know, fish do that just fine without being conscious. Let's not get into whether they are or not. So we need a whole range of self-awarenesses, cybernetic feedback loops. You know, obviously, right now we're going through this panic attack because our governor has banned TikTok, and even students with private cell phones are not allowed to use TikTok on campus because they use campus Wi-Fi. Talk about a Great Wall of China. Our campus is now surrounded by a forbidden sign. You cannot use TikTok on this campus. I mean, where are we going? Is that what the metaverse is going to be like? All these great walls keeping people out rather than helping people connect? Anyway.
Yeah, no, what I want to say is thank you, all of you, for the intent of SOIREE is to have these robust conversations and get them started. So I really appreciate that you pointed out William Joel's posts in the Q&A. I know that some of you as panelists have been able to answer him through typing. And, you know, Holly, Heidi, Roger, Rejane, thank you so much for your presentations. We ran a little bit over, but we do have plenty of break time scheduled. So I would encourage everyone to stay in touch. And I would love to see, you know, for a future soiree, maybe some follow-up submissions and presentations so that we can continue the conversation.